Without further ado, I'm going to bring on our first speaker, who is Nico Valdivia Hennig. Nico is a Chilean game designer and a researcher of cultural studies, and he's one of the co-founders of Niebla Games. They are currently completing a PhD at the University of California, Riverside, where they're researching ludic activism, game design, and game production in Latin America. Today, they will share their experiences and insights on approaching design as a research creation in their game Guamán Puma, which is exhibited and nominated for an award here at Amaze. And the game serves as both a homage to the indigenous Andean chronicler Guamán Poma de Ayala, and as an exploration of decolonial theory in South America. Please welcome them with a round of applause. Thank you, Nico.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Paulo, also for your great introduction. And it's a pleasure to be sharing also this space with them, because we were like a couple of months ago in California, and I was presenting Paulo, so it's a pleasure now to have them here sharing this moment. And thank you so much for being here at this time, on this day. I'm super excited, and I hope that you can also get something from this talk. And as you can notice, I'm wearing my most flamingo shirt today, just to be amazed as all of you. So this is my presentation. It's called Weaving Decolonial Narratives Through Research Creation, and Guamán Poma Through Ink, Fabric, and Pixels. So this is our game. It's called Guamán Poma. It's a game about this indigenous chronicler. It's free on itch right now. And I wanted to show you just 1 minute so you can have an idea of what Guamán Poma is. So that's the game that we're showing today. And so a little bit about me before we start. Fortunately, Paulo already said many things. And since I'm here, I need to share that I have many hats, like many people here too. But just as a summary, I'm co-founder of Niebla Games with Maureen Barreau, a game producer and sociologist. We have a studio in Valparaíso, Chile. And we do commercial games, but also experimental and ludic activist projects with our studio. I'm also right now a PhD student in the University of California in Riverside, who supported also the possibility of coming here, so I really appreciate that. And also I'm part of Rio Junto with Joana Nieto, a cultural manager. It's a Latin American cultural exchange hub and collective that we found in California, where I'm temporarily based right now. And the overview of this presentation, so I would like to share so many things about this project, but just to have like an idea about this is like this approach on game design as research creation. There are like what I'm understanding as research creation, who is Guamán Poma, what the new chronicle and good government, or this Nueva Crónica y Buen Gobierno, the work of Guamán that I'm going to share with you, and what decolonial theory is, and what's the approach that I'm having to do this project. And then, like the process of research creation, positionality, the tools, the collaboration, and the final game and the retribution as part of the ethic of the whole process that we're doing. So in games, we always have a research phase, right? Like everyone that had worked on art or in any creative media, all of us have at some point some part of research that usually we start with an idea, with the starting drive, some motivations, and at some point, like ideally, we will do some research based on the concept. In case of games like the mechanics, you can do a benchmark of what is the context of the project that you want to intervene with. And then you can continue with other so many phases, like testing, iterations, leveraging, and then funding, production, like the other 200% of any project. But in this process, what I wanted to share with you is starting from a different point when understanding like this research creation process. This project, Guamán Poma, started first with this, with my own research on the scholarly side. I come from the making side, and then I started like becoming a scholar also. So I am trying like to bridge spaces, and in this bridging endeavor, I decided that I wanted to explore the theoretical approach of a real work and fascinating work that I'm going to share with you today from a medium that I need to express with. And that's why, in this case, the research was before even knowing that it was going to become a game. So after doing the research, like these academic drives, the theoretical approaches, and my own personal standpoint, I was wondering, like, then there's some desired outcomes, that I want some outreach with this research. I want to have some kind of impact, and also try to have like an educational approach with this. So then the creation became like not just like an option, but also like a personal need. Like in my own positionality as game maker and artist, I needed to express this, like all this that was happening with me while doing this research on the work of Guamán Poma on decolonial theory and on how to do through games. So this is also like one of the possible many approaches that we can have to research creation, and this is the particular method and based on this experience. So, who is Guamán Poma? Felipe Guamán Poma de Ayala, or more known as Guamán Poma, was an indigenous chronicler from the Andes, from the Andean region, where the Inca Empire Cultural Society were based. Nowadays, it's the territory that we call Bolivia, Peru, the north of Chile. And this particular figure is fascinating. He was born around the 1534 till the 1615 in the valley, the Sacred Valley of Cusco, in all that Andean region, and he had to live the transition moment where the colonizers from Europe came to the region, and he was a noble person in the indigenous structure where he was part of, and he was taught by Catholic priests. So he had like Spanish of that time / Christian education, while also having their own indigenous and their community education. So he's a super fascinating figure of a transition of time, of paradigms, of cultures, of cosmologies. And that's what makes him like interesting. But the thing is that he traveled through many, many places, documenting the injustices and the violence that the colonizers were imposing to the indigenous peoples, and decided to write a letter to the King Philip III. And I'm talking about like the 1500, in circumstances that were terrible, and despite everything, he decided to walk, and to write. I'm talking about a letter of 1,000 pages, 400 hand-drawn illustrations with ink. It's a crazy thing that he was doing, but sadly, the work never reached the king. So the work is called Nueva Crónica y Buen Gobierno, that in an old Spanish could be translated as the first new chronicle and good government. This was to denounce the injustices of the colonial regime. It was written in this old Spanish of the 1600s with some interference of Quechua and Aymara languages. And as I said, this letter, this book/letter, never reached the king. However, it went to Europe somehow. Like, he was trying to give this letter to the viceroy in Peru to have an option so the king would be able to read his letter, or that's what he was thinking at that point, and this book letter disappeared for centuries. The thing is that this was rediscovered on the 1900 in the Danish Royal Library by some scholar, and it was like, what the fuck is this document? Like, no one knew what this was. Like, imagine you found a piece in a kind of strange Spanish, like pretty ancient, with a material that it's probably starting to decompose a little bit, with these crazy illustrations of a place that it's pretty different of everything else that they found. So after a couple of years, like it was like around 20 years, finally, it got like, it was starting to be like researched by more people. Fortunately, now we can have access online access and free to this work. So go and explore it. It's incredible. It's amazing. And the thing is that it never got to the king. However, it returns today, to our days, to claim again for the justice for all the peoples. And it's fascinating on how that it's still being as relevant as it was at that time. So despite being lost, it's still being super important. That was like the main drive to continue working on this. So part of this research was also engaging with decolonial theory and decolonial thought. So I'm going to do it as a super oversimplification, just to think about colonization as an event of this period where the Europeans came to the Americas, colonizing and giving a category less than human to the peoples of the region. Colonialism, it's understood as a process and something that we consider, and we can see how is ongoing process that it's happening right now, nowadays, sadly, in so many places in the world still. And the coloniality, it's what we can identify on the structures that are part of this, not just moment, but process that are still making permanent some part of the structural inequalities of this. So the colonial theory, it's a transformational, it's a revolutionary or reframing paradigm where we have some thinkers like Aníbal Quijano, Enrique Dussel, Walter Mignolo, and in particular, here we have a Silvia Rivera Cusicanqui, a Bolivian sociologist that sometimes it's related, it's associated with the decolonial thought. Sometimes she said, no, the colonial it's also a trend, because there's always this issue that sometimes theories becomes like a token to use it in some context, and not when it's so important to state and to try to really use any space to open and to make the necessary critique. Like if we talk about decolonization, we're talking about structural transformation, and I can't be having a talk without expressing my explicit support to the Palestinian people, with everything that is going on, that it's terrible, to Rashid, an awesome game designer that we had the pleasure to share with online recently. So I can't be here talking about decolonization without making a strong statement on ceasefire and justice for Palestine. So as soon as possible. Thank you. So the work of Silvia Rivera Cusicanqui, it's been super important in my research and in the decolonial approach, because she has worked a lot with Guamán Poma's work, with this new chronicle and new government. And she has developed a proposal of the concept called Cheje, or C-H-I-X-I, Chixi, but Cheje is how it's an Aymara word to refer to the spotted, to express the contradiction, and to think about how all of us are not just a mestizo conception, as if you have some tone colors, suddenly you have a mixture and then you have a gray kind of thing, but instead of being just a gray in a point, in a scale where you can have just one, like the result of everything, it's to start thinking about ourselves as spotted of having so many things, and that we need to embrace as a contradiction and as an active part of what we are, instead of trying to have like just one coherent narrative, that always, like the coherent narrative, it's one that comes from the power position to try to govern all the other narratives that are left behind. So with that in mind, I started to have like, okay, this is part of the research. This work is awesome. And there are like the three key concepts that were born on this process. So on the first hand, we have ink. The ink is the work of Guamán. Guamán did this work, this letter, these drawings, like the one that you can see there. And then we have the weaving thought and creation, like how we can relate theory with this, with the work of Guamán, but also with their own experience of doing this research creation, thinking like with the mindset of, I'm trying to weave all of this, theory, my own experience, the work of Guamán, and how to bring it through digital media, and there's when we got the pixels. So it's video games as art, but also as an intervention. So those are like the three concepts that are guiding this research creation. And as any research, also I need to think about my own positionality with this. On the first point, it's like my own personal tensions and acknowledgements, like I'm from Latin America, I'm from Chile. I'm also like most of the people in Latin America have like a mixed ancestry. I'm white in Chile. Now living in California, it's fun because I'm not that white, and that's cool to feel. But also, like, I have like many people in Latin America. There's always like, oh yeah, I have some family from Spain, from Germany, and that's are like the main narratives, and we never know, and so few people know about their indigenous like ancestors. And I have the privilege that I did like the DNA test, like, but that's cost a lot, and it's not something, and it doesn't link me directly with any community either. So it's a pretty complex things, and those are part of my own tensions approaching to this topic. And also, I grew up with like listening to Andean music and to have like this cultural influence, but also as acknowledgement, I'm from Chile. I grew up in Patagonia, in the southern part, and in Valparaiso too. So this is a story that I really wanted to work with a lot of care, with a lot of respect, as an homage to Guamán, and also trying to see like what can I do from my particular position. And that comes to the ethical and political standpoints that I want to use this research creation to open these kind of discussions as creators in Latin America, but also for people and audiences in so many other places to foster like these kinds of discussions. And in the third place, I really wanted to do like an active standpoint on against the myth of the solo dev. There's always something that happens in the industry that we have like this conception of there are people that make games just by themselves, but in the reality, there are so many people and unpaid and unrecognized labor, and for me, it's important to point that. So to go a little bit quickly, so we have some tensions that I wanted also to put into this creation. So we have Guamán. This is a self-portrait of Guamán that we used. We treated it to add it to the game in this pixelated style. And also, we wanted to, like, in my own position, having this tension, having like these cultural mixtures that we have in Latin America, I really wanted to use Guamán works, but to put it in tension with a Western perspective. So there's where we have like this. There are some spirits in Guamán's path, and there's a spirit called Maki, that it's basically Niccolo Machiavelli represented as a spirit of a Western paradigm to confronting Guamán and having a dialogue, because it's fascinating. On one hand, Machiavelli died a few years before the supposed year that Guamán was born. So they're like pretty close, but of course they never met each other. And Machiavelli was writing to the prince, right? And Guamán was writing to the king. So it's a super interesting parallel that we can have both talking about power, sovereignty, religion at some point. And I wanted to have like this journey of Guamán with their own conceptions, their paradigms, their own struggles being questioned by this like Western conception of power. And I think that that's part of these personal tensions that I wanted to put into play and worked very well. So if you want to check it out, that would be awesome. And also that this game was made with Bitsy. That's why this is not a solo dev. I worked a lot in this, but like Adam Ledoux did this awesome engine. If you don't know it, go and check it out. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's super simple, works on browser, and I really need to advocate for this. I expressed this research creation and myself thanks to this tool and to the work of many other people also, that like using tools like Borgsy, Bitsy Saber, Pixie, Bitsy Muse, Bitsy Color, and many more made by the awesome community of Bitsy and all the people that wants to foster tools for more people to express themselves, like research creation, artistically, or any other in any other way. And here we can see an example on like an image of Guamán's work, one of the Guamán's illustrations, with this treatment added to the game in this pixelated style that also have this approach of the pixel art allows to give some kind of distance, but at the same time treat them some like in an honest and deep way the terrible things that are also expressed and materialized on this awesome work of Guamán. So it was like a really interesting approach on how to not to oversimplify, but also work with speculative fiction and speculative play and as an active resource on this way to express this research creation. And also a fundamental part of this work is the collaboration and the cultural consulting that we have with Kenia Chavez Caguana, that was born in the Sacred Valley of the Incas with a Quechua Andean background in Cusco, Peru, and she was member of the indigenous collective at the University of Chile. She belongs to the Ñaupañan community in Cusco, Peru, and is currently collaborating with the Anuncam Space Foundation in Santiago, Chile, with Cesar Sicos Yucra, born in the Sacred Valley of the Incas in Cusco with a family background of Quechua speakers. He's a trilingual tourism guide fluent in Quechua, Spanish, and Portuguese, and he belongs to the Ñaupañan community in Cusco, Peru, and is currently pursuing his studies in English. And Jessica Sicos Yucra, who was born in the Sacred Valley of the Incas in Cusco with a family background of Quechua. She is currently completing her higher education in bilingual, intercultural, and primary education. So this has been also like an awesome opportunity of collaboration with them, and because of this, we don't only like it did like this, the cultural consultant, but then we started collaborating, and because of them, we are super happy that now the game is available on English, in Quechua, and in Spanish, and that was like a super awesome thing that we're so proud and happy and to share. And because of this, part of like the final game and the further collaboration, because of them, we started we're starting a collaboration with the Cusicausay Andean School in the Sacred Valley of Cusco to do some ludic workshops to teach the young people there, or anyone that would like to participate, to how to use some minimalistic tools to help them to tell their own stories, like any stories that they want to tell. Like, we're not pretending to just tell stories from some other people. Like, part of the whole research creation and our ethical standpoint, it's also to foster so more people can express creatively through the game and ludic media. So that has been the process of this weaving, this ink, this pixelating, everything through this research creation project through Guamán Poma. So I hope that you can check it out on itch. It's free. And thank you so much for your attention.
There we go. Thank you so much, Nico. We have time for maybe one or two questions. Are there any questions out in the audience? One over there. Anybody else? No, I'm going to get to you. All right, let's go with that one. Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Hola Nico, muchas gracias por la plática. I'm also from Mexico. As you can see, I'm also white, so I fit very well with the white Sican description, if you're familiar with that. And I wanted to ask you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on this. How do you position yourself with this internal conflict of course, wanting to develop this decolonial process, or at least how to work with it, and also knowing that, at least for myself, I am a product in a way of colonialism, right?
Thank you so much for the question. So for me and for us, like the main thing when we're approaching to this, it's like we need to consider the whole process, like the whole research creation approach. It necessarily needs to understand like our own ethical and political first like interest. There's always interest on what we do, and we need to be explicit, and we need to recognize it and be transparent with that. So we really wanted to engage with this because we want to have more indigenous representations and Latin American with this like really complex concept of Latin America, because the indigenous peoples, most of them, the communities don't want to be part of this concept of Latin America. Of course, like Latin America, it's a colonial concept also. It's, of course, useful to simplify things, and we use it a lot. So it was like a first approach to use this new classic work. So it's like advocating, like I really want that the world needs to know about Guamán Poma's, about Guamán's message and the incredible and titanic work that he did at that time, and that it's still being relevant, and that's like so important. And also, like, we want to see more creations. We want to see more processes where the communities are participating and having the privilege of being part of the game-making ecosystem. I understand how difficult it's first on some regions, like in Latin America in general. It's not the same as thinking on the ecosystem here, for example. And it's even more hard to have like better conditions in spaces that are more marginalized or that are like subaltern considered. And that's why part of making this game was also considering that we need to, like, part of the whole process. This is like one part, but like going and doing ludic workshops in those spaces to see if they want. Like, it's not, hey, you need to do games, because it's, here are tools, do whatever you want with this, but here you have it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nico. We're out of time. Please give him another round of applause. And we're going to bring on. And we're going to introduce our next speaker.